The day of the wedding, the groom didn't show up. I stood alone in front of the guests, smiling to greet them, delivering a speech, making a promise to myself to never give up. 7 years have passed. He never appeared again. Someone told me he had passed away, but I couldn't believe it until later. I encountered a person who looked very much like him multiple times. That person actually knew all our secrets. During college, Ethan had been pursuing me. This was known throughout the school. He came from a wealthy family, living without worries, while I was just a country girl with no one to look after me, only focused on studying. Yet he was particularly fond of me, deeply in love, but no one knew. In fact, I was deceiving him. I rejected him time and again. It was also intentional on my part, because I felt that men often do not cherish what they can easily obtain. So, I designed a game of him chasing me and me escaping, repeatedly played out. We got engaged. Like any other couple, we promised each other a beautiful future, but to be honest, compared to loving him as a person, I value more the endless wealth and prominent reputation behind him. That is something a country girl like me, with no background, could hardly reach in a lifetime. The wedding is approaching. Because he loves me, all the preparations strive for perfection. Custom-made, luxurious wedding dress, top-tier diamond ring, a wedding attended by celebrities. It gave me the scene I had always dreamed of, the day before the wedding. I prepared a simple dinner. We both had a little wine together. We said we should enjoy the last moments of being single when we were a bit tipsy. I shook my wine glass. Feeling a little drunk, I asked him, if I deceived you, will you still forgive me? He continued to drink. He downed the full glass of wine in one go. I have understood everything. This is where things end. The day of the wedding, I dressed up meticulously, looking forward to a new life as a wealthy lady. However, the concierge told me, he is missing. Mrs. Ethan, will the wedding still go ahead as planned? I glanced at the lively guests below. They were all important figures I could never reach. I wiped the tears from the corner of my eyes. I said firmly, of course. I walked onto the stage in a long, trailing wedding gown. Everything was as I imagined. This is a grand wedding. Today's wedding. Except for the groom not showing up, everything else went according to plan. I hope everyone enjoys tonight. My tone was calm, as if everything was planned. Someone in the audience is whispering, but soon it was drowned out by the conversations of others. We have long publicly announced that we have obtained a marriage certificate. We just haven't held the wedding yet. This is something everyone knows, even if the groom is not present. It doesn't change the fact that we are legally married. For the busy celebrities in the audience, who is getting married today is not important. What matters is having an occasion to exchange resources, to strive for more benefits. I also stepped off the stage to chat with the guests, as if there were no groom at the wedding. Oh, that's how it is. You're still marrying him. The speaker is my old rival. She once swore she would only marry Ethan, and Ethan also publicly stated he would only marry me. As a result, I became a thorn in her side. I gently raised my hand, elegantly clinked glasses with her, and smiled as I said, of course I will marry him. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Looking at her angry expression, I straightened my back. I walked with my head held high in the evening. I sat alone on the wedding bed. The room was eerily quiet. The daytime noise felt like a dream. Now, there's no trace of that arrogant demeanor from the day. No matter what, I still married into a wealthy family. Right, I gave a bitter smile. Although everything seemed to go as I wished, my heart was filled with bitterness. I sat alone in the dark for a long time. So, you eventually found out the truth, right? 7 years have passed. I got everything I wanted. The only thing I didn't get is him. This is the 132nd love letter I sent to Ethan. The envelope is pink with blue edges. I carefully sealed the envelope and gently dropped it into the mailbox. He won't reply. I'm well aware of that. He has disappeared. Right on our wedding day, I had asked him before, if I make you angry in the future, you won't pay attention to me. Where should I go to find you? He gently touched my hair and said softly, it won't be like that. I can't bear it. I used all my charm to act cute. He barely managed to speak. If that's the case, just write to me. If I receive your letter, I will come back. He didn't tell me where to send the letter, but those letters I dropped in the mailbox had no recipient written on them. They always disappear on time. Ethan, it's been 7 years. Are you still not planning to show up? I'm really about to break down. I wrote another letter. It's white. It's my suicide note. I sent it to my lawyer. The next day, the sound of the postman echoed at the door. Mrs. Ethan, here is a letter for you. I have already spoken with the lawyer. The letter only mentioned the distribution of assets. You don't need to reply. That letter, it shouldn't be his. But he has been missing for 7 years. Not a single word has been heard. Everyone says he might no longer be alive, but I have always been unwilling to believe it. I stumbled down the stairs. Shaking, I took the letter from the postman's hand. The envelope is white. Mrs. Ethan, hello? I am your lawyer, David. I didn't listen any further. I closed the door. Slowly sliding down the wall, I sat on the floor. What was I thinking? Was I thinking about the person who disappeared for 7 years and suddenly reappeared? I chuckled self-deprecatingly. Mrs. Ethan, hello? May I ask if you are home? Someone is knocking at the door. The tension from earlier is bothering me a bit. I opened the door. Wasn't the letter already delivered? The man is dressed formally. His tone is very calm. Mrs. Ethan, hello? I am your lawyer. David, we spoke online before, about your will. I have a few points I want to discuss with you in person. I'm afraid I can't express everything clearly in the letter. So I made a special trip here. When I saw his eyes, the tears I had been holding back finally flowed down. What he said is no longer important in this world. There is no one like him anymore. Or rather, he is Ethan. I want to ask him why he left me all alone. Why did he make me listen to those hurtful words alone? Why did he make me face it alone? But I said nothing. Just like usual, I suddenly threw myself into his arms. I pressed my face against his clothes. I took a deep breath. I could feel his unique scent. It's enough that you're back. Just coming back is enough. Mrs. Ethan, please pay attention. He raised his hand and slowly lowered it again. His voice remained steady, but I noticed a hint of unease in his eyes. I didn't care how he refused. I forcibly pulled him into the room and pressed him down to sit on the sofa. I said to him, sit properly. As she spoke, she picked up an apron, reciting something under her breath. You love the mango cookies I make the most. Making mango cookies requires flour, but we have no flour at home. We've run out of mangoes too. The nearest supermarket is, as she said. She prepared to go out at that moment. Someone shouted, Mrs. Ethan, I'm allergic to mangoes. He saw that I was a bit out of control. His tone softened again. I was taken aback for a moment. The apron fell to the ground. I looked up at Ethan. His appearance overlapped and separated from the person in my memory. Yeah, he is not him. I hurriedly wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Speak, I'm sorry. I just miss him too much. I calmed down, sitting on the sofa, preparing to listen to him continue speaking. He took out a stack of documents from his bag. Mrs. Ethan, I reviewed the will you sent. I found some issues. I originally wanted to write to inform you, but based on the tone of your letter, it seems you are not in a good state. So I specifically came to check on your situation. Do you need a psychologist? He asked cautiously. I became increasingly certain he is not Ethan. If he really were Ethan, he will definitely laugh at me first. He'll say how much I love to cry. Then he will pull me into his arms. He absolutely can't bear to see me cry from feeling wronged. I'm trying hard to suppress the disappointment in my heart. Thank you for making a special trip. Let's change the irregular parts as you said. I'm doing well. It really is quite good. I'm just going a bit crazy. It's just that the longing runs deep. It's incurable. It's fine, you can leave first. We'll get in touch if we need anything in the future. I opened the door to signal him to leave. He is like him, but he is not him. I'm afraid I might recognize him wrong again, looking at him again and again, hoping again and again, and then feeling disappointed little by little, watching his back. Every move he makes reminds me of that person from 7 years ago. Why don't you recognize me? Are you still mad at me? I'm touching the door lock, spoke softly. This lock was specially made by Ethan because he was worried I would be scared living alone. It was custom made. It's difficult to open and also hard to lock. But David just now, when he closed the door, he did it with such skill and without a hint of hesitation. Doctor's words echoed in my mind. Miss Rachel, I see you have been coming to see the doctor alone during this time. Let me be straightforward. Your time is running out. You need to prepare early. I picked up the pen again and wrote a letter, still using that blue-pink envelope. This time I didn't express my longing as usual. The letter contained only one sentence. I'm fine. Don't worry. Since I have reached the end of my life, let the past grievances go with the wind. 7 years later, I finally found his whereabouts, but my time is running out. I finally found out his whereabouts, but I don't have much time left. The day after I sent the letter, he was standing at my doorstep again. He still looks calm. His attitude is also very polite. "Mrs. Ethan, your letter accidentally arrived at my place." He shook the blue and pink letter. I forced a smile, but I didn't confront him. He finally arrived, but I couldn't feel any happiness. "Come in and have a seat." I opened the door for him. I poured a cup of tea. The tea slowly flowed down. Memories surged to the forefront of my mind. He remembers. I never liked drinking tea. I found it too bitter. In the past, I only liked sweet things. But life has been too bitter in recent years. The bitterness of tea seems trivial in comparison. "Mrs. Ethan, the tea is filled to the brim." He gently reminded me. The tea spilled over. He noticed that I saw it and quickly grabbed a tissue to wipe the table. I accidentally saw an old scar on his wrist. I looked at him. His expression was indifferent. He was nothing like the passionate person who pursued me back then. Moreover, Ethan has no scars on his hands. Who exactly is he? Voices came from behind the little garden gate. "Hurry up, finish pouring and leave quickly." I looked out from the kitchen window. I saw 2 teenage boys splattering the almost blooming white roses in the backyard with paint. I was furious. I quickly opened the door, wanting to chase them out, but they had already disappeared. I squatted down. With a pained heart, I wiped off the red paint on top. The color looked like blood. It was frightening to look at. My tears kept falling. This flower was planted by him and me together. He said he would watch it bloom with me. He also said he would definitely come when the flowers bloomed. Year after year, this flower bloomed again and again, but he never showed up. Perhaps he will appear when the flowers bloom this time. David also chased after them. "Hurry and stop me." He grabbed my hand and said, "Don't do that. You might hurt your hand. This flower can't be kept. If we don't cut off the flower covered in paint, the whole plant will die." He carefully observed that flower. I didn't say anything. I just lowered my head, insistently trying to wipe off the paint from the bud. But the more I wiped, the more it broke in the end. I stopped my hand, sitting on the ground, silently looking at the already damaged flower in my hand. I smiled gently. He and I, just like the flower in my hand, slowly. It was all created by myself bit by bit. He looked around. With a somewhat complicated expression, he asked, "Who are those people? Why are they doing this? Do we need to go through legal procedures to protect you?" It was arranged by his mother. "You don't need to worry," I said without looking back. No need to look. The words "murderer pay back" written in red paint on the wall are very eye-catching. Since the wedding ended, I live as Mrs. Ethan, but his mother has always insisted that I caused Ethan's death. His mother often sends people to disturb me, but I don't want to make things too tense with her. I believe he will come back. I don't want him to be in a difficult position in the future. He understands me. He knows that what I care about most is money, so he left all the money to me. He is no longer here. What use do I have for so much money? I looked at David, who was fiddling with the flowers. I couldn't help but rush up and grab the corner of his clothes. "You know all that has happened. You must know where he is." "Right." He saw that I was emotionally agitated. He quickly stepped back a few paces. "Say it." No. I really don't know where Mr. Ethan is. I'm just your lawyer." That being said, his eyes were clearly wandering. "Obviously, he's lying. If you need anything, find me. You can call or write at any time. But please don't take me for Mr. Ethan." That said, he bowed to me, then turned and left. I called someone to check his background. His name is David. He's a lawyer. His parents are gone. Just like me. He's also had a tough time. An idea suddenly popped into my head. I quickly picked up a pen and started writing a letter. "I'm running out of time. Don't you really want to come see me?" The next day, I stood by the mailbox for a long time, but no one came to pick up the mail. How strange. Usually, when I send a letter out, the mailman comes to pick it up quickly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Days pass by one after another. I have been looking forward to his arrival from the very beginning. Now I am completely disappointed. I sit quietly in the yard. My eyes are fixed on the red roses all over the yard. I can't bear to cut them. Before long, they will all bloom. He will be back too. At this moment, there is a sound from outside. "Mrs. Ethan, are you home?" There is a loud knocking on the door. It sounds urgent. I open the door. I blinked hard. The tension that had just risen in my heart disappeared in an instant. A black suit. Ethan never wears that. He said he hates black suits the most. He is not Ethan. He is David. I remind myself repeatedly. "Hello, is there something you need?" He looks a lot like Ethan. Every time I see him, my heart gets all tangled up. He speaks with a stutter. His face is still sweaty. He looks like he rushed over. It seems he hasn't figured out what to say yet. "Exactly. Oh, right. About that will. There are a few small questions. I wanted to discuss them with you. I invited him in again. This time I prepared orange juice. I smeared some mango juice on the rim of the cup. He rummaged through his bag. After searching for a long time, he found nothing. He said nervously, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Ethan. I forgot to bring the documents. It's okay. Just have some orange juice to relax. We'll deal with the documents later." I saw through his lies. A lawyer never fights an unprepared battle. It's impossible to make the mistake of forgetting the documents. The only explanation is he saw the contents of the letter. That's why he rushed over. But only Ethan will read the content of the letter. Who exactly is he? After I subtly expressed that I had no thoughts of ending my life, he let out a slight sigh of relief. Although the action was very small, but I still noticed it. He is worried about me. After he left, I quickly opened the mailbox. Inside lay a blue-pink envelope quietly. It was exactly the same as the one from a few days ago. Who is he? Not long after, I fainted in the supermarket due to a sudden worsening of my condition. I was sent to the hospital by a kind-hearted person. When I woke up again, I found David leaning by my bedside. He was sleeping soundly. I was so thirsty that I couldn't speak. I moved my fingers a bit. He woke up. He poured me a glass of water, then he quickly explained. The doctor said, "The only person you can contact in your phone is me. The only person you can contact on your phone is me. So it's me." He's in such a hurry to explain, probably afraid I would misunderstand. But how can I not misunderstand because of this? I feel like I won't live long. Send out a farewell letter. He has appeared. I sent out another letter expressing my wish to end my life. He has come. I was hospitalized due to illness. He came to see me again, to a stranger. He doesn't need to do this. But he is not Ethan. Yet he still came, late at night. He sat by my bed with me. I couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with memories of Ethan. Tears flowed down unknowingly. I heard him get up. I felt a bit nervous. I quickly closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep, in the dark. He looked at me for a long time, as if he noticed I was crying. You gently wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. There was silence for a while. Finally, he softly said, "What is this? Why bother?" I woke up the next day. It felt as if last night's events had never happened. He bought me breakfast early in the morning. I opened it to take a look. It turned out to be our favorite steamed ribs from college. I looked up at him in surprise. I wanted an explanation. He ignored my gaze. He sighed softly and said, "Hurry up and eat. It won't taste good if it gets cold." I couldn't eat at all. I held his hand tightly. He must know something. I'm his brother, half-brother to be precise. He was born into privilege, while I am just an unacknowledged, illegitimate child. I often envied him. He is liked by everyone wherever he goes. After a moment of silence, he continued speaking. Even after he had been gone for a long time, there are still people who remember him. I felt as if I had grasped a lifeline. Hold his hand tightly. I haven't had a chance to speak yet. He took out a blue and pink notebook. Say it, I don't know where he is either. I just picked up his love diary. After saying that, he slightly raised the corners of his mouth, with a hint of sarcasm. That notebook was hand-stitched by me and given to Ethan. I can recognize it at a glance. I blankly snatched the notebook from his hand. It says, September 16, 2008. She is really cute. If I must be asked, how to coax me if she makes me angry. I had to make up a reason on the spot, to have her write a letter to me. She probably won't take it seriously, but I will absolutely not let her get angry. September 20, 2008. Worried that she might not be safe living alone. I specially installed a special lock for her, to protect her like a treasure. October 12, 2008. Today we went to eat delicious ribs near the school. I made a silent resolution. One day, I will buy that store and give it to her. In the diary of a youth, every sentence is filled with deep emotion. Each word leaps off the page. As I read on, my tears blurred my vision. I couldn't help but burst into tears. I let him down. Since then, I gave up the thought of searching for him. I no longer had the courage to face him. I picked myself up again. I started managing his business. I began to stand out in the business world, although I thrived in the marketplace. In reality, I was just a poor person who had lost their home. My career was flourishing. I became a rising star in the business world. Just then, the media exposed my will to donate my entire inheritance to an orphanage. It caused quite a stir. People were talking about it. Some said I felt guilty for causing my husband's death. Some people say I'm superstitious. There are unspoken difficulties. In the face of these speculations, I haven't responded at all. One day, Ethan's mom came to visit. She is a bit overweight. Her face is adorned with exquisite makeup. She is wearing a white fur coat. Her expression seems somewhat disdainful and arrogant if it weren't for having spent time with her. I really wouldn't believe she could be the type to secretly instruct others to throw paint. I heard you plan to donate all your money to the orphanage. She took off her sunglasses. She gently blew on her hands painted with red nail polish. Yes, that money was given to me by him. How to use it is my freedom. At the moment I said yes. She could no longer maintain her elegant demeanor. She rushed over and grabbed my hair. I didn't back down either. I grabbed her hair. I slapped her across the face. I also tore at her clothes, in chaos. I've been injured on my face. Her ear is also bleeding. Ethan's assistant said helplessly, "My two young ladies, can you calm down a bit? I was only parked for a few minutes. And you caused such a commotion. He knows everything about my past. Let's go. My two older sisters, we should go to the hospital first. Women can't have scars on their faces." He spoke with concern and flattery. I can let that woman into my home. Thanks to him for connecting the dots all these years. In the hospital corridor, Ethan's mother and I are waiting for the injury report. I'm covering my face, feeling anxious inside. At this moment, my attending physician happened to pass by. Seeing me, asked in surprise, "Oh, Miss Rachel, what happened to you? Why haven't you come for a follow-up with your condition if not treated? It could happen at any time. I can't care about the pain on my face." I quickly reached out to cover his mouth, but the words have already been spoken. Ethan's mother hurriedly asked, "What treatment? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" I'm a bit surprised. Her tone was filled with concern. What happened? "Ethan and his dad don't want me anymore. Even you don't want me anymore." As she spoke, she began to cry softly. I didn't know what to say for a moment. Suddenly, she grabbed the doctor's hand. The doctor said, "I'm a family member. What treatment did you just mention? No matter what treatment, we will treat it, as long as it can get better." They walked and talked, leaving me alone in the hallway, feeling lost. After a long while, she walked out with a gloomy expression. I could only speak first. "Mom, me." I hesitated for a moment. Finally, I called out to her. We've been arguing for so many years. This is the first time I've taken the initiative to call her that. When she heard it, she gently placed her index finger on her lips. Then she slowly walked towards me. She said softly, "SHH, this matter cannot be spoken loudly. If the messengers of death hear it, they will definitely be waiting nearby to claim lives. Let's be quiet. Don't tell them." After saying that, she held my hand. A warm feeling came over me. The woman who had argued with me a few hours ago, it seemed like she wasn't her at all. At night, I lay in bed. Beside me was Ethan's mother's even breathing. During the day, she insisted on moving things in to stay. I said her mom was still insisting, but she shook her head. "Mom, don't bother. I've decided to donate the entire inheritance, the share that Ethan's dad left for you. It's enough for you to live a good life. Why do you have to be like this?" She smiled awkwardly. "You know I have more than enough money to spend. It's been so many years. Can't you see it yet? I just feel too lonely." She looked a bit sad, indeed. The old lady worked hard to raise her son alone. Then her son suddenly disappeared. Thanksgiving. I poured 2 glasses of red wine on the balcony of the top floor. "Ask Mom. Mom, in the years right after Ethan's dad passed away, do you miss him?" "Of course I do. How could I not miss him?" I also cried all night long, just like you. I couldn't sleep. Fortunately, Ethan was there with me at that time. But now he's not here either. It was not easy for me to find a daughter-in-law, even now. Pa, of course not." I smiled helplessly. I never imagined in the past that we could sit here calmly and chat like this. "Mom, I lied to him. Will he ever forgive me?" She feels upset inside. Every time I think of this matter, my heart hurts like it's being pricked by needles. She turned her head and smiled gently. "No way, that child of his. I understand him. He likes you so much. I still remember how he was after meeting you. He came home and said to me with determination, 'In this lifetime, he will only marry you.'" She looked at the distant full moon, with a peaceful smile on her face. I wonder if she also recalled the scene when Ethan's father pursued her back then. "Ethan, where are you exactly? Are you also looking at this same full moon?" I looked up at the full moon in the sky. I silently thought to myself, why does Ethan insist on marrying me? Because I deceived him. He got separated from his parents when he was a child. It was Lucy who took him home, my sister, not me. That day, Lucy was acting strangely. She secretly hid the eggs, which were rarely eaten, in her clothing pocket. Even though she was very careful, I still discovered it. After dinner, I quietly followed her. She went to a corner and meowed a few times. A well-dressed little boy emerged from the darkness. His eyes were still wet with tears. He held out, "This is what I saved up. You eat it. After eating, we'll go home." On the streets at night, the shadows of the two children gradually stretched longer. I followed closely behind. I felt a bit worried. Lucy is my sister. I have to protect her well. They walked for a long time. I followed them all the way. Based on the boy's description, we tried to guess the location of his home. When Lucy was confused by the boy's words, I was behind them, anxiously throwing stones to guide them. Children are easily trusting of others. No one noticed that someone was following behind and happily chattering away. It must be the fairies in the sky wanting you to go home. So, we took the boy back with us. At the time of parting, he told us he would always remember Lucy. For a child of that age, there aren't many things they can remember. He only remembered the bracelet I made for Lucy. 1 year after we met, Lucy passed away. It was due to a high fever when we first met. His eyes were always fixed on the Lucy bracelet on my wrist. Later, he began to pursue me enthusiastically. I knew he saw me as Lucy. I gradually led him into the trap I set. Just a little bit more. He was about to marry me. However, he still sensed it. "Mom, did you hear Ethan actually has a brother?" I looked at the old lady next to me. I said to her, "You mean David?" "Right, I know him. That kid is about the same age as Ethan. He has a lot on his mind. If you see him, it's best to keep your distance. He has never liked Ethan since he was little," she said, somewhat dissatisfied. "But look at how early his mother passed away. I send him some money regularly every year. Maybe it's because no one disciplines him. That kid is a bit of a troublemaker. I find it strange. The David she mentioned is completely different from the one I know. I remember David's usual gentlemanly demeanor. It's completely different from what Ethan's mother said." After my questioning, I finally realized, before I took over the company, he had been secretly dealing with the company. If it weren't for Ethan's mother's decisiveness, the company would have been swallowed by him long ago. But isn't he a lawyer? How does he have such great abilities? How did he get Ethan's diary? I didn't even ask these questions. Some questions can only be clarified by oneself. The next day, I went to the law firm that David mentioned. It's a complete mess here. It doesn't look like a law firm at all. Even if we went back hundreds of years, this place could never have had a law firm. I was deceived. At that time, I had an assistant from the company handle the will. Since he has the ability to swallow the company, buying off a small assistant would definitely be easy for him. I clenched my fists. I dialed David's number. After the call was connected, I calmed down. "Tell him, David, where are you? I want to change my will." He was a bit surprised, but to maintain the previous image, he had no choice but to agree to me. I arranged to meet him at a cafe 800 meters away from the police station. I stared at his face, deliberately pretending to be dazed. He reached out to adjust his collar. "You're becoming more and more like him. Even this black tie." It was his favorite. His expression changed drastically. He suddenly ripped off that black tie and stomped it heavily on the ground. Then he approached me. Gritting his teeth, he said, "What are you talking about? His favorite was that brown tie. He wore it on the day of the wedding. He said I looked like him. He doesn't deserve it at all." I smiled gently. I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Your identity has been exposed." The police officer next to him also arrived. "Mr. David, we suspect you are involved in kidnapping and fraud. Please come with us to assist in the investigation." He suddenly realized I was setting a trap to catch him. He was instantly furious. After a struggle, he was ultimately subdued by the police. I walked up to him, looking at him with a victorious smile. "Can you tell me where he is now?" He suddenly burst into laughter. "He's dead. You will never find him again in your life." I suppressed the shock inside me. I stepped forward and grabbed his collar. "What did you just say? Can you say it again?" He spoke up. He said it word by word. I said, "He's dead. On the day you got married, he passed away." I remember how he struggled in my hands at the end. Even at that moment, he was still begging me to let you go. It's truly a situation that leaves one both laughing and crying. He was taken away by the police. I felt like I suddenly lost all my strength. He told me, "Ethan has passed away. It was on the day we got married. He just left, so, all these years, he wasn't avoiding me. But he could never come back to my side. He never knew until the end. I actually lied to him.